Right, let's see if we can talk for a couple of minutes about how institutions are failing young people at the very least. So there's this idea that any young person who's growing up needs to subscribe to some sort of an institution to sort of take their place in society. If you don't become a part of an institution, that you're more or less considered an outcast. In very extreme cases, in very rare circumstances, would you be considered as a valuable contributor to society? Those might be like fringe entrepreneurs or some like a handful of YouTubers, right? So, point being that young men and young women and all those that lie in between are sort of being brainwashed, have sort of been brainwashed since, I don't know, probably since the beginning of time, to take their place in a predefined role in society. And that's how it's worked. So the predefined role usually exists in one or the other form of bureaucracies. And those bureaucracies are what I'm referring to as institutions here. So it could be the institution of marriage, which has been the case for women, that they're sort of brainwashed to be a wife or a mother or whatever. For men, it's usually some kind of corporate hierarchy that they're brainwashed to compete, and sort of rise up the corporate ladder. And now, obviously, with the advent of changing gender roles, that seems to be changing as well. But at the end of the day, it's still the same. Take your place in society in the way that we've defined it, otherwise we won't really value you. And that's fine. I'm not really as worried about the system. I am worried, however, about the education that people are receiving that does brainwash them into thinking things like these. So for example, with schools and with colleges and universities, we're basically being fed these lies about our competence being only reflected in the exams that we do take, rather than as just being a subjective measure of how good we might prevail in the world that has existed since, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, I'd say about 5 centuries. Like, that's how long I'd probably gauge it to have evolved into its current form. Like, if you could trace it back, that's probably how long you could see the current patterns back in the past as well, reflected in the past. So what I'm trying to say here is that because there has been an evolving sort of wave of this way where people are taking more and more people are taking unconventional paths, I do believe that it calls for critically questioning whether or not this education that we receive is that of any value at all, considering it's just teaching us to enter bureaucracy in one form or the other. Yeah, that's basically my point. Oh, by the way, yes, I completely forgot to expand on why it's a losing game. When you do enter a bureaucracy, bureaucracies served a couple of purposes. The number one being, the probably, and I'm conjecturing here, so I could very well be wrong, so please feel free to correct me. But from what I've learned about how bureaucracies function, I think the entire thing came down to people being restricted to access information that was, in the hands of a few trusted people. And this evolved at a time when trust would run low, even within communities, when social media did not exist, when communication did not exist, emails did not exist, the internet did not exist. So people basically didn't know how the world worked unless and until they rose through the ranks, sort of. And even then, they had, I'm guessing, what was probably a very myopic view of the world. And so just think of it like this. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say there are 10 people, right? And they are told to coordinate a task. Let's say they're students in a college, in a university, and they're told to coordinate, um, uh, coordinate for the purposes of some study that they're pursuing, right? So if they didn't have social media, if they didn't have WhatsApp groups, if they didn't have email, if basically they didn't have any digital screens or any way to communicate about things, how would they go about their work, even going about how to schedule meetings with each other and get the work done? It would probably be like one person takes the responsibility of telling everyone that you need to assemble at this particular point in time, and that sort of defined that person's role in the hierarchy, right? There would be a hierarchy, because if it wasn't like, when I'm saying hierarchy, it's basically an asymmetry in how people do things, right? So there'd be one person going around and telling everyone that, look, the meeting's at 7 p.m. tonight at this particular place, and I need all of you to assemble there because I've been told by so-and-so to do it. And again, so because there's one person deciding, how do you sort of coordinate, right? Like, if everyone, like all 10 of those people would be saying, no, let's meet at this time, you probably wouldn't have, it would sort of delay that entire thing of scheduling. So they would say, look, okay, let's just give power with respect to this particular thing of scheduling to one person, and then we can coordinate, right? So it's an extreme form of organic division of labor, I suppose. But in some senses, it gives too much leeway to the person who has that particular power, who has that particular role, and the other people are just being instructed to do it because they have no other choice. And so I think that's how hierarchies form, right? Whereas if you look at something that's more organic with respect, like, let's just consider the case of WhatsApp, right? You'd think that, okay, let's just open a WhatsApp group and then everyone can communicate, and then everyone, like, there are a few polls that are put up, and then everyone sort of starts taking in what date they feel the most comfortable with, and then that particular time slot is chosen, which I think is way more democratic. And as I said, like, it's So I think I'd just like to clarify what I meant by organic division of labor. It wasn't organic division of labor; it was organic division of power, not labor. It was like one person has the power to do these things, the other person has the power to do these other things, and so on and so forth, right? So, and basically it meant that there was more mechanical division of labor and more organic division of power. But what we want in today's day and age is mechanical division of power and organic division of labor. You do what you do best, I do what I do best, but let's operate with autonomy instead of just you dictating my terms, or vice versa, or any of that, right? So yeah, I think that's a good solid start. Let's see how this works.